Hey, I've got a very special guest on the No Fear podcast. Bedros Keuilian is joining us. Not only has he become a friend, but he's also a mentor. I read his content regularly. I forward it to my team. I share it with people who I think need a kick in the butt. He's an amazing motivator, and he's been very, very vocal during this whole COVID pandemic stuff. So I was excited to have him carve out some time to get on the show. Bedros, how are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. Man, what an honor. Tony Blauer.
I should explain that I just sort of worked out for the Vimeo recording. People were looking, I'm so nervous talking to you that I'm sweating, but I actually just worked out. And
well, I'm actually going to tell people after, when we show the rerun, I'm going to put my own narrative. I'm going to say Tony was so afraid of me, he was sweating after I challenged him to a fight.
Right. And that could happen. And you are, it's funny, just off on a tangent. I was interviewed for another podcast recently. We were asking about things I noticed back doing scenarios. And back in the 80s, I intuitively noticed that when we were doing Fight Club before Fight Club was a thing. And so we would do these like monthly fights where people, a street fighter, boxer, taekwondo, judo, jiu-jitsu, they'd come in, we'd put on makeshift gear, Bedros, and we'd sign waivers. And then we would do these scenarios. And you would always, like guys like you and I, we size people up. We're guys, we're alpha males, right? We go, that guy's strong, that guy's fast, that guy's not that. And I noticed that sometimes, quite often, the people I thought were going to dominate didn't. They got scared and they turned their back. They tapped early. There was no tapping back then, but they tapped early. So I noticed that, and I explain it like this: the people who manage their fear manage to fight. The people who manage their fear manage to fight. And this is an indirect compliment. And I'll have you back on the show to talk about your life story and your book, which is so inspirational. But you're a fighter. You're a fighter, and it never would matter whether you understood the technique or the rules. You're just going to figure out how to win.
When you have no other choice, again, we'll talk about it on another show, but when you come from a foreign country and you're the immigrant, you don't speak English, and you're bullied and picked on, all you can do is fight your way out of gang fights. And I wasn't in a gang. It's just gangs like to beat me up when we live in Section 8 housing because I'm the immigrant. And then in business, it's the same thing. You nailed it. If you can manage your fear, you can manage whatever crisis. It doesn't have to be a fight like this. It could be a fight with just wordsmithing over a text message. It could be a fight for the next dollar. It could be a fight to keep your company or your marriage afloat. If you can just manage fear.
100% agree. And that'll segue beautifully into the purpose of this. I wanted to get you on, even though it feels like we're coming out the other side of lockdown, pandemic, COVID-19. I saw online, some guy started calling it COVID-19 84, making the Orwellian joke. I thought that was very clever. But even though it looks like, oh, look, we're on the other side of this, the country's starting to open up, there are a lot of people who are scared shitless, devastated, and your posts and the people I bring on here are people who maintained their positivity. They were strategic online, and they were trying to help people. It wasn't just about you. I mean, you have amazing products and courses, but you would also, multiple times a day, 7 days a week, you're still trying to motivate and inspire people. So I want to talk to that and see if we can pick your brain a little bit on ideas for people dealing with this. But first, before we get into any of your recommendations and strategies, I wanted to ask you personally, how are you doing? Because there's the forward-facing Bedros, right? Okay, I gotta record something, and then how are you doing? Just with all this shit.
You're the first person to ask that. I've been doing a lot of interviews during this time in the last 11 weeks of this COVID virus. You're the first person to ask, how am I doing? And I guess you're the most appropriate person to ask because we also have a friendship. It's not just some guy who reached out to me on DM who says, I've got 1 million followers and I wanted you on my show. I'm not sleeping well at night, Tony. I'm not sleeping well at night. And it's not because of a money issue. Actually, my companies are doing well. I talked about it publicly. My franchise, we haven't sold a single new franchise location since this started. Very normal. No one's going to buy a business,
right?
$50,000 plus build out and sign a lease. My supplement company, my coaching business has been blowing up. Literally, 3xing what my franchise did during this time. But I'm not sleeping well at night because I started to, about 4 or 5 weeks in, I started to see what I believe is the bigger agenda. And I've been openly talking about it on social media. I'm not a political person, man. I'm not, but I've been talking about it. It's an election year, and I see the writing on the wall of the politicians who don't want the president to be, reinstated again for another 4 years. And so if we can just crash the economy and blame it on him, or stop life as we know it and blame it on him, it's a good reason not to vote for him. And all that is happening, fine, man. Democrats, Republicans, do your own damn thing. But once it affects my quality of life and the quality of life of the people that my clients, they're not customers, they're clients. Clients mean they're under my protection. Customers means it's a money transaction. Once I see my clients mentally suffering, because I'm 45, I've been through some very bad shit before in my life. I can suffer through hardship. This is nothing. I'm built to battle. I'm built for the winter. Man, I've got some young 20-something-year-old clients who are launching businesses, and I'm coaching them, and same with franchisees. And I see them suffering mentally now, emotionally. It's killing me. And it's not because of a damn virus, Tony. It's because of the politicians trying to limit financial growth right now. And I'm not sleeping well at night, and I'm talking out against it, and I'm losing a lot of followers, but I can care less because I believe it's the right thing to do as someone who comes from a communist country and has seen a more strict version of what's happening now.
Wow. Yeah, no, I picked up on that. There was there were a couple of posts where you got really animated, and it was about that. And I never felt, it was funny reading through the comments. I'll read through like friends of mine's comments just and wondering, okay, like, should I say something here? Like, but it was like, it was interesting just to see how polarizing that was, and that some people can't see what's happening, that there is a very, very huge infringement on our civil rights, just this idea. But it was also crazy to notice that the whole world shut down at the same time. There's something bigger than just the manipulation out of DC and Pelosi and all of that. And anybody, and this always blew my mind, and I don't want this to be a political show. I want to get back to strategies and psychologies and stuff that you can share. But, when they started to do the small business, bailout stuff, how immediately it turned into, well, the Kennedy Center is going to get this, and illegal immigrants are going to get this, and we want mail-in voting and all. And it was like, wait a minute, like, aren't you supposed to be saving Americans' lives right now and businesses?
You can't go and name it the CARES Act like you care.
Right.
And then do everything to show that you don't care, because every day that a business stayed shut and lost money was a day closer that business was to filing bankruptcy. And when you bribe their employees with so much unemployment that they want to stay home and take unemployment, not come back to work now that work's opening up, what is the small business owner to do, man? It's just an unfortunate thing. And Tony, I'm going to say one more thing. And again, I know not to be political, but then we get political. But we got to spread this message. And these are the things, the facts that aren't shared on the big news channels, networks, is that for every 1% increase in unemployment, so if you go from 3% to 4% increase in unemployment, you have 34,000 deaths that will happen over the next 12 months. Majority of those deaths will be of heart attack, because financial stress, arguments with your spouse, business going under, behind on debt, and you lose hope and you experience fear, and then you have a heart attack. The second source of that is suicides. Third source, which we've already seen increase by something like 2x already, domestic violence. And so when we've gone from 3.5% to about 14, 15% unemployment right now, you do the math, that's 300,000 real deaths that are going to happen in the next 12 months, Tony. And no one's going to say that was from the COVID virus lockdown. They're going to say it was from a heart attack. It was just suicide. It was just domestic violence. It's from this, and it could have been controlled in a smart way.
That's powerful, man. And, there were tons of memes and talks about this, but, when, even the government, I remember that I forget the lady's name, came out and said, hey, we're just going to label everything COVID-19. They weren't even trying to hide that,
Right.
And so it'll be interesting. Well, it suits them if it's for extra money, for your hospital, we'll just label it COVID-19. But I said this from the beginning, and you're saying it much more elegantly than I did. But whatever, the virus is real, and the virus is 10x, but the fallout is going to be 100x.
Easily,
So,
easily. And
you know,
by the way, we're just getting out of the virus lockdown and the quarantine right now. Where are we? We're end of May, going into June. By end of June, we'll have some sense of normalcy. What we haven't even experienced yet is the financial crisis of this. Like, expect the next 12 to 24 months. Like, that's real winter, man. Now you're going to see what, like, all these people who were getting their unemployment checks, and that will stop. And when they go to look for a job again and that job's not there because we took so long with the financial relief and we acted so harshly in forcing businesses to shut and not reopen. And now the real suicide, heart attack, domestic violence, alcohol, drug abuse. And by the way, shit. Talk about arming America. You better be armed if you want to be able to live.
Crazy, man. Crazy. You know, it's interesting. You just see the back and forth, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, you know, social distance, don't social distance. The numbers are crazy. And I look at, you know, I read a lot of stories because I've got a family business. It's my business, right? And I, you know, I remember when this first happened, I was like, okay, we'll be locked down for 2 weeks. I can handle that. And then when it extended, one day I realized I could lose everything that I built, because, like, why aren't we fighting? Why does my business have to stop? What has this got to do? And you can have 400 people in Walmart, but you can't have 12 people in a gym in, like, one of your franchises.
Right.
Or I can't run a class for 20 cops who are essential workers. Right. It was just, it's scary shit. You brought up something.
It's arbitrary to see what businesses, what vocations, professions, like, why is a liquor store okay, a pot dispensary okay? And by the way, I'm okay with them being open. Just let us also open small gyms, because to people who work out or who do jujitsu and roll or who do any kind of martial arts, that's a mental relief. And I could just get that anger out, that frustration out, that out in the gym, whether I'm rolling, working out, lifting, kicking, so that I don't go home and do something stupid, either medicating myself or turning it on to my family. This is not for the good of the people. This is just for the good of the politicians at this point.
It's crazy, Bedros. You bring up the really good point just about the training. There is actual science that says training helps your immune system, right? Which is what you need, a strong immune system. So, you know, you mentioned family a bunch of times and stuff like that. So I wanted to ask you another personal question. How's your family doing with all this?
You know, the family's doing really well, man. And they've helped me cope. You know, my kids don't know that I don't sleep well at night. You know, it's my job to protect them. I've got a 13 and a 14-year-old. And, so lots of time, you know, thankfully I've also got my own private gym out here in Chino Hills. No one works out there, just me and the family. So we go there, work out every night. We go on a 3-mile hike afterwards. So it's been such great bonding time.
Nice.
With the family. I taught them how to make fire using a flint. Like, we're just doing caveman shit at home now, you know, and it's good bonding time. So family wise, we're doing great, but this is weighed on me. And sometimes I get so pissed off, Tony, because I'm like, how can I let this weigh on me so much? I'm doing well. My family's doing well. My finances are doing well. But I know that if I stay silent, my kids' generation will have less freedoms and opportunities because of the slippery slope that's being allowed right now. And I just can't, I can't keep my mouth shut.
No, it's good. And I'm excited. I'm more excited to, you know, when I asked you on the show, like, I think you had just started, when I first texted you, you hadn't started this angle. It was more about just motivation, stay training, working out and stuff like that.
Because I really thought this was a bad virus. And I, just like you, I thought, hey, this is going to be 2, maybe 3 weeks. We're all going to stay on lock. And look, if this thing really had the death rate that it had, that they said that it had,
right,
and if it was as contagious, remember, just last week they said, CDC says, by the way, you know what, we were wrong. It wasn't as contagious on surfaces and doorknobs like we thought it was. And oh, by the way, it doesn't transmit like we thought it would. It's like, you motherfuckers, what are you thinking, right? And so in the beginning, I was like, hey, you know what? We could get through anything together for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks. But as the numbers and stats come out and the facts and figures come out, where a lady dies of cancer, she never even had COVID virus in her, her death certificate said COVID virus, her family is suing the hospital, or another person dies with the COVID virus, not of the COVID virus. They again label it as COVID virus because you get paid $13,000 for a COVID death, $39,000 for a ventilator use in a hospital. You're incentivized by the government to list higher death rates. And so as those facts came out, I went from this like motivating people to, hey, stay home, quarantine, let's all do it together, to, oh shit, the facts are coming out. Fuck this. I got to speak up.
Yeah. And I'm glad you have, because that's contagious. You know, one of my early posts, I wrote, you know, fear is contagious, but so is courage. And we need voices like that. It was interesting.
Tony, can I ask you something? I got to ask you something, because you're an expert where this is concerned, man. And I've been waiting for this. There's only one question I have for you is this. Fear is contagious. I've experienced that personally. So is courage. But is it like fear is like 10 times more contagious? Because people, it seems like we're attracted to fear like a moth to flames, whereas you see someone courageous and you're like, well, thank God he's doing it.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And thanks for flipping the interview. Here's the thing. I think we are there's a couple of things going on. One is, if you and I were living in the Old West and we knew which mushrooms were poisonous and which ones got us high. We knew which plants to eat and which ones caused, you know, poison ivy. We hunted for our food. We could still be, if you were, let's say you were my mentor back then, and now next thing we know, we're surrounded by bandits. And you said to me, we're going to die unless we do this. In that moment, I believe in that generation, courage was way more contagious than it is right now. And where I'm going with this kind of like, you know, weaving this answer, we are so pussified. We've outsourced our safety. We live in bubbles. We think the government's going to do this and the police are going to save us and that I think because our survival system is so hardwired to us, right? It's, you know, hundreds of thousands of years old, that the startle flinch response, the whole, you know, sympathetic, parasympathetic relationship and all that. I think we've been so slowly beaten down where, look at this, the whole world stopped because of some tweets and some new, and even the type A, like, we're going to fight like their fights were memes, right?
Yeah.
Their fights were, right? And so it's
Got
such an interesting question. I'd love to talk longer on it, but it's the short answer is this. I always tell people, you can't be courageous without fear. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. And so when I'm trying to coach people through our No Fear program, I'm reminding them that we all fear. You know, Customato, Mike Tyson's original coach, said the difference between the hero and the coward is what they do with their fear, that they both feel it. And, you know, we see those memes, or we see that you know, that maxim somewhere, and we go, damn right, you know, and then we leave and we want to be a courageous bystander. We want to do something, but we're scared. And what we do is, excuse me, I was talking to someone the other day and I said, you know, intuition whispers in our ear and fear says, fuck off. Intuition says, you need to do this right now. This is the right thing to do. But if we've lived a life, you know, you can, like I tell people, they go, well, how do I practice courage? I go, you just said it, you practice courage. You don't wait for an active shooter to see if you're courageous. You don't, you know, decide I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow. You decide I'm going to run around the block, and then I'm going to do it twice, and then I'm going to extend it. So you create this adaptation, but you can't do any of that, Bedros, until you create self-awareness for what a fear spike feels like. It's that moment of doubt becomes hesitation, hesitation becomes fixation, fixation becomes this non-clinical anxiety, where you're now, you know, you're going, hey, what are you doing? And you're going, nothing. What? No, you're just standing there. You're not fucking moving. So I come back to full circle. If you and I were living in the jungle or a couple hundred years ago and you said, run, you know, I would be frozen in fear, because I wouldn't care if it was a snake or bandits or whatever. But that's because I was being taught to be self-sufficient because I lived out in the wilderness, and now everything's handed to us. So I think a lot of it is society is just pussified. We're used to, and we're in the, what fucking generation is where everything is filmed right now. It's like, oh, look at this really bad shit's happening, I'm going to film it.
Right. Instead of doing something about it. Yeah. Let me document it first.
Yeah. Interesting question. So I tell people, like, you know what fear feels like, because we all have, relative to our wheelhouse, there's something you might do. I can't think of it right now because all the different things I know you've done where you go, wow, this is scary. Okay, I know this feeling. I'm going to go do it. That's the adaptation. That's the self-awareness. Someone without self-awareness can't create critical thinking. And you need critical thinking to make scary decisions. This is, I'm going to threat discriminate here. I'm going to fucking move towards the danger. And, but I just keep coming back to it. And I tell people that you know what courage looks like, feels like, sounds like when you read it, when you see it in a movie, when you see it on the news. But in the back of our mind, most of us go, I wonder if I could do that. And, you know, you look at, I don't know if you remember the first time you started doing big talks up on stage, or if you get any type of stage fright, you know, when you talk now, because you're maybe.
I still do.
Okay. So this is a great example, because remember the first time I saw you talk, and I've been speaking publicly for 20 years. The first time I saw you talk, I came up to you, it was at one of Craig's events. And I was like, dude, that was a fucking amazing. Right. And you're really good. And like Mike Tyson, a lot of people don't realize Tyson used to throw up before his fights. But you know, if I said to you, that guy there, if you didn't know who he was, and I said, see that guy knocking that guy? Oh yeah. He was scared shitless and he threw up. He was so scared. You'd go like, what, that guy? You know, you know, your head would flip back and forth. So the idea here is I tell people that when you're courageous, you're actually scared, but you're using your fear as a fuel. And that distinction, if I can get people to understand that helps them. If they remind them that there are lots of things in life you need to do scared. When you decided to get on your platform, I'm sure you had advisors and other people going, yeah, this might not be good for the brand. You're not running for governor. What are you doing? You're going to lose followers. And there's a moment there, just like going on stage, where you go, fuck it. I got to be the courageous bystander and do the right thing for society here.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that, because a lot of my peers, and I'm not going to mention any names, they're all great human beings. They would text me like, man, I'm 100% in support of what you said there on Fox News. I really love how you positioned it there on social media. But then you didn't see them leave the comment like they normally would on my posts about that. So
or reshare it or whatever.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, you hit the nail on the head, the brand. But you could either be a bystander and then regret 10 years later the actions you didn't take, or you can take the actions today and sleep better at night, even if I'm a little broke next, 10 years from now, which I won't be.
Yeah, no, 100%, because you're a warrior. So let's spin this to business. So like most of the people who listen to my show are military, law enforcement, martial artists, CrossFitters, fitness buffs. And you know, metaphorically, I always say, make this kind of like metaphor, like government of the self. You got to be commander in chief, but then your body is the guy that's digging the trenches. You know, he's part of the engineer group, and then you might have to fight, and now you're special forces and you're engaged. So we all can learn stuff, whether you're an entrepreneur now or you're an employee somewhere. And you said something earlier that I wanted to touch on really. You know, I know a lot of business people who've said to me, I can't even get my employees to come back to work. And you kind of alluded to that before. Like, you know, someone close to me said, I'm making more money on unemployment than I was working my ass off. You know, that's a character thing, right? It's okay for a minute, but then it's like, I remember doing a big gig down at a military base, and the guys I was training got deployed on Wednesday. And so they got called out, interrupted our training. Someone came down and said, hey, this wasn't your fault. We're still going to pay you for the week. And I was like, I'm really uncomfortable with that. You know, I'm a small business. I mean, I can't afford not to get paid, but I owe you guys 3 days of training on the next one. They're like, no. I said, no, I can't take money for work I didn't do. Right. So, you know, you have a message for people who are like sitting on unemployment and their boss calls, hey man, I need you to come in. And they're like, oh, sorry, man, I'm having fun drinking beer.
Yeah, absolutely. What you did there when you said that to the military, when you said, I still owe you 3 more days because these guys are going on deployment on Wednesday, is you flexed your integrity muscles, Tony. That's what you did. And the reason they were able to flex is because you've probably used integrity in many opportunities.
Correct.
And you've defaulted to integrity in times where you're like, hey, I could do this and no one would know any different. And so what I would tell anyone, whether you're an entrepreneur and you're like, hey, I've got employees who aren't coming back, or say they're afraid to come back, but really I can tell they're milking unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're someone out there milking unemployment and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this as long as I can. I hope that entrepreneur fires you. Like I plan on firing people who if I sense that in my team, which I don't, but I see that happening in so many of my clients' businesses. I've been around for a while, so I vetted my team out. But one, I hope you either get fired, or two, I hope you start working those integrity muscles, because they've clearly atrophied so much that you've defaulted to being a vagina.
Nice. Okay, let's go into some quick, more strategy questions now, but that was a great answer. This has obviously affected your business in a big way. Specifically, what did you do to adapt?
So what we did is, funny, in my book, Man Up, I talk about the 6 pillars of entrepreneurial leadership. Pillar number 4 is to be decisive. It's not to make the right decision every time, but to make a decision and move fast. Speed of implementation. Money is attracted to speed. And in business, and if you have to sit there and try and gather all this information, no different than battle probably. I've got a lot of friends who are Navy SEALs, and they have to make split decisions at times, because if they try and gather all the information, they're going to get blown to hell. Right. And so what we did on March 13th, we heard about this. By March 17th, we were already shutting down all 700 some odd Fit Body Bootcamp locations in Canada and US, our franchises. And we had pivoted in 3-4 days to online coaching. In addition, because we wanted to, one, take the existing clients we have and keep serving them at home, working out online, so that they can keep paying our franchise locations. Number 2, we knew that we were going to have freezes in their memberships. So we estimated about 10 to 12% freezes. We got 17% in freezes. So we needed to make up that money. So we also launched a 28 Days Stronger Together at Home Challenge for $28. In other words, do this for 28 days for $28 online for new people coming on board. And if you like it, pay $97 a month and we'll coach you online. And that literally made up the gap in revenue that we lost. Now, did I know that was going to work? No, but I made the call. We invested the money. It was scary. We launched it out there. And so we were able to pivot quickly. And when I talk about in my book about speed of implementation and being decisive, I say you will know soon enough if it's the wrong decision and you can course correct. Mm-hmm. But if you never make a decision, you just stand at the fork of the road, you will end up dying of indecision.
Nice. Solid. Okay. Switching gears. What has been the best thing about the lockdown for you?
The best thing about the lockdown for me personally has been very selfishly. My workouts and my nutrition has been even more dialed in. Right before I logged on, I ate an Icon meal. Anyway, they send us all frozen chicken and beef with veggies, the right macros for me. So because I'm not traveling as much and living out of airports and hotels, ate even cleaner, working out twice a day, doing the long hikes with the family, and my abs are just more defined than ever, which for a 45-year-old fatty, because I love fatty foods, I'm excited, man. So physically, it's been amazing for me. I love it.
Nice. What's the worst thing about the lockdown for you?
Like I said earlier, when you asked me and I candidly told you, I just haven't been sleeping well. And if you really want to know the truth, a few times during this lockdown, I defaulted to my old remedy that I stopped doing years ago, which was NyQuil and Vicodin to fall asleep. Again, I hope people watching this don't panic and freak out and try and send me to AA or whatever, Narcotics Anonymous. Probably 5 to 6 nights of the 11 weeks that we've been through this, I got to the point where I had such little sleep so many days in a row. And remember, it's a multi-million-dollar franchise. I got to make big decisions that I guess, pharmaceutically put myself to sleep, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm going to be honest. And so I broke my sobriety there.
There you go. That's all right. But you're lucid and you didn't do it. Here's a difference. I'm not justifying for anybody. Everyone, what they're calling people Karens now? Yeah. This is not me being Karen. If what you did there was because you had to protect your family and your team and your business.
Yeah. I find it very functional and I don't regret it. And I did it.
You needed sleep because you know what sleep deprivation is going to do. You're going to fuck shit up. So, and and just for anybody like listening to that, and I don't know anyone that's going to make a big deal about it. Very different than if you're sitting at home in the lockdown and you've gained 20 pounds because you're drinking every night, eating fucking pints of ice cream, and now you can't stop drinking, eating pints of ice cream. So very, very different. Okay. This is an interesting one because the news changes all the time. There's so much misinformation. There's so much disinformation. The media out there is a fucking joke, and I now repost things where I now go, this has not been vetted. I happen to like what's being said. I don't know if it's true. And then I share it, on Facebook. But where are you getting your info and how are you verifying it?
So where I'm getting my info is through a variety of sources. I'm not dumb. I do watch, let's say, or go to the CNN and MSNBC and Fox News network, because I do know they have very different political views. But I also, thankfully, am pretty well connected, and so reach out to actual doctors and scientists who I know, one of them being Dr. Gabrielle Lyon out in New York. She's an amazing badass. In fact, she works with a lot of tier 1 operators and keeping them optimized in their health, company leaders, organizations, et cetera. And she happens to be my own personal doctor. And through her, I've met a lot of people that are on the front lines in the hospitals who have been very candid and open with me about how this COVID is really affecting people and who it's affecting. Like if you've eaten a lot of sugar and if you're several pounds overweight, and if you have a bad health disposition, well, guess what? The COVID's going to get you more. But that was no different than the flu virus 2 years ago. If you're pre-diabetic, not by choice, in other words, because you're sucking down sugary beverages and not drinking enough water, the COVID virus or the flu virus or the cold virus or a kick to the shin is going to take you out faster than you and me. And so there's nothing groundbreaking about that. Interesting.
I dig it. You've already alluded to this. We got deep into this, but is there something, if you would sum up an answer, what bothers you the most about everything going on? Clearly, it's this overreach angle.
The overreach, and I also do realize I'm self-aware enough to know that I come from a communist government, communist country, Armenia, the Soviet Union, and so I've experienced this as a young child, seeing the KGB walk into our house, line us up against the hallway, and inspect the house. And so this is no different than that kind of overreach, that the government will disable you and then tell you what's right for you and what's best for you. And you never want that. Trust me.
Yeah. Without making this political, which is hard because we both gone down that rabbit hole. If I put you in charge, like Bedros, get the flight to DC, you're in charge, what would you do?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say if you're immune compromised and you're above the age of, let's say, 58 or 60 years old, stay home and quarantine yourself until further notice, while we have actual doctors who are not tied to the World Health Organization or the CDC figure out what's going on, and let the rest of us open up small business in a smart way and begin to generate money for the great country that we live in. Because if we're writing all these stimulus checks, by the way, let me just say something. I fired someone last week. I fired someone because I do a Facebook Live with all my employees. Only the leadership team is here at HQ right now, 7 people. Everyone else is working from home. I fired one of my employees because she, on our weekly live with me, the CEO, was talking to her ex-girlfriend and saying how disgusted she is with her ex-girlfriend and da-da-da. She didn't realize her mic wasn't on mute. So I called her name out and I told her she needs to mute herself. End of day, she was fired. She came. Well, she comes here and she tells her head of HR, she goes, you know what? I'm really glad I got that $20,000 from the PPP program. Head of HR goes, what do you mean? She goes, I got a friend in a bank who was able to get me on the PPP. An employee of mine fraudulently got $20,000 because her friend works in the bank and was able to doctor things up. How much of that is happening? So one, I would want all types of investigations, because our money is bleeding out. Taxpayers are small business owners are not paying into taxes, yet we're shipping money out to all these different businesses, and everyone's saying let's stay quarantined. But then what's going to happen? How are public hospitals going to be able to serve people? So anyway, quarantine the immune compromised and the older folks. Get real doctors and scientists on it who don't have an agenda and anything to gain, a patent or anything to gain from this thing, and then launch a massive investigation, and then get small business owners to go back into business and contribute to economy, and we're fucking good.
Awesome. Wow. Hopefully the president listens to my podcast and hears that.
Fool not to.
Yeah. Nice. This second last question. This is you sitting with you have dogs, don't you? You have a dog, don't you?
I have a dog, yeah. Cookie.
Right. You're sitting with your dog, finished a workout, everyone's inside, you're watching the sunset because you live in beautiful California, and you turn to your dog and you tell them this. And so the question is, what's been the most challenging thing for you? Now, we've talked about a lot of things, but I love asking this question because it kind of like every time we talk, the onion peels and peels and gets deeper. Honestly, just you and your dog, what's been the most challenging thing?
The fear. I do have fear. You know, going back to the whole theme of your podcast, the whole theme of what you have done for the last 20, 30 years, Tony, the fear that I have, not of losing my businesses or any of that. I've learned how to thrive in business. The fear that I have for my kids. Dude, why do I have to go and why do I have to, I was yelling at my wife the other day in a compassionate way, why do I have to go buy 3 AR-15s years ago, by the way, all these pistols and all this stuff, all this ammo, and my wife's like, hey, you know, I trust you, but why are you doing all this again? This is 3-4 years ago now, Tony. I was like, because I don't believe my son or daughter will be able to go do it for their own household when they're older, and so I'm buying it to gift it to them in the future. I shouldn't have to think that way. That scares me, man. I live in fear because of that. It's the fear that's not letting me sleep, the fear of what might happen to our country. And I see great people sitting on the sidelines waiting to take action when it's time to take action. I'll give you a quick example. 7 years ago, my family and I were flying back from Hawaii. There was a guy that was a flight risk. We were in business class. He was in first class. He was hitting the seat in front of him, making the gun gesture. The flight attendants were coming through our aisle. My wife and I look at each other like, what the hell? We're now 30,000 feet over the Pacific, and they have zip ties in their hands. And I go, ma'am, what's going to happen here? What's going on over there? Like everyone's gathered away from this guy. She goes, we have to zip tie him. He's a flight risk. I said, is there anything I could do to help? And I looked at the guy sitting behind my wife because she's across the aisle from me with Chloe, and I'm sitting with Andrew. And I said, is there anything I could do to help? She goes, no, we have to first ask him to voluntarily put these on. And I look at the guy, and he's like foaming at the mouth, going bananas, Tony. So bottom line is, she went over there along with the other flight attendant. You know, you could see that, like, here, put this on. The guy just lost it. And she looks at me, and I imagine that everyone's just going to rush this guy and dogpile. This is like post 9/11. Just me and the guy behind my wife run up. Thankfully, I had gone through one of my recent 6-week challenges was the MMA fighting, and I learned the rear naked chokehold.
Right.
I was able to get behind him, get him in a rear naked chokehold. We zip tied him, etc. We landed. LAPD took him away. My point is, only 2 out of a fucking plane load of people attacked this guy, and we all could have died a very horrific death. It's not like the rest of them had fucking parachutes.
Right.
And so now it's the same thing. I see great people with so much tremendous power and influence sitting back while lonely me, the immigrant, who is now a naturalized citizen, I should say, and I'm very proud of that. It just pisses me off, man, and it scares the fuck out of me.
Dude, that was fucking awesome. It was fucking awesome. You're right. I can't wait I'm going to fast track this one and bump this up. I
would tell my dog I'm afraid. How about that? Cookie, I'm afraid.
Nice. And I would tell you through your dog that you can't be brave if you're not afraid, and you're going to use that as fuel, and you're going to inspire people because courage is contagious. And I can't wait to launch this episode. That was fucking amazing. Proud to call you a friend and a mentor. I've learned so much from you, and you've motivated me when I've been down because of, injuries and mental shit and stuff like that. So thank you for all that. Final message for anyone listening about life, fear, mindset, anything.
You know, the final message is this, man, is, you know, I'll bring it full circle to Cookie. When we got Cookie 3 years ago, she's part Mastiff, American Mastiff, part German Shepherd, a very big dog. When we got her, she was 8 months old, 80 pounds. And I only saw her on Facebook. I live in Orange County. A family in San Francisco was like, hey, we're giving her away. She's too big. We don't want her. She's too strong. Up to that point, we only had small dogs. And I told my wife, I said, I don't know why, but I'm drawn to get Cookie. My son and I flew to San Francisco, one-way ticket. Like, we knew we were going to get her. We didn't even know her disposition. We got a Cadillac Escalade, put her in it, drove back 9 hours to Orange County. And, you know, my wife said, this thing is so big that we need to get a dog trainer to teach us how to handle this thing. I can't just put her in my purse like I do with all the other dogs. And so the dog trainer comes and says, look, because she's part German Shepherd, she needs purpose and she needs routine. In the absence of purpose and routine, she will get depressed, anxious, and start digging holes in your backyard. So make sure she has either your kids to shepherd or you play ball with her every day at the same time, but she needs purpose and routine. I was like, geesh, okay. She goes, yeah, your backyard, your beautiful backyard will be destroyed with all these holes that she'll dig because she'll give herself purpose. I'm like, whoa. And I realized in that moment that we're no different than dogs, Tony, that if we don't have purpose and a consistent routine, even in a time of chaos and crisis like this, even in a time of good and bad and indifferent, if we don't have purpose and routine, that we will start digging holes in our life through alcohol, through drugs, through infidelity, through gambling. Develop your purpose. Stick to your routine and always sharpen that spear, man, because the moment that you lay off that pedal is when we start sliding into anxiety and depression and start digging holes in our life.
Dude, amazing. Bedros, where is the best way? I mean, I'll put in our show notes, you know, links to all your stuff, but the best way for people, are you most active on Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram is my jam, dude. I just like it. It's a very quick, fast platform that I could just go and like and comment and high five and bounce. So yeah, but I'm very active on Instagram at Bedros Keuilian.
Beautiful. We will stick you there. My friend, thank you so much for everything you do. And we will see you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Be safe.